somewhat short period of time. It seems like a long time, but it's a short period of time for a topic as important as this. So I just wanted to, while everyone's getting seated, get started, and at least telling you a second about myself. My name's Rue Landau. I'm Executive Director of the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations. We're the city agency that enforces the civil rights laws, the non-discrimination laws, and also works in communities to resolve conflicts and to bring people together across differences and different backgrounds. We've been doing this since 1951. We're in the Home Rule Charter. We've been doing it since 1951. And we have some great archives, some great historical materials that show that we've been working on issues of changing neighborhoods, which is one of our big issues we're working on now. We've been working on issues such as changing neighborhoods since the 50s and the 60s, where we've been talking about everything from disinvestment and people fleeing neighborhoods to different people moving into neighborhoods, and how we as Philadelphians should handle that and can handle that, and tools to help with that. So I wanted to know if you have everyone's bios. You do have everyone's bios. Excellent, good. So I will just very quickly then get started by asking all of our panel members to just go down the row here and to just tell us who you are and give us a short perspective on the issue of race, class, and community development. I'm asking him for a snapshot right now, and we're going to get into a more in-depth conversation, but a snapshot to start. Thank you.
Good morning. Raheem Islam. I'm President and CEO of Universal Companies, and our primary mission is to deal with the massive disparities within the Black community, both economically, socially, educationally, whatever the disparities are. I'm also the convener of a new organization called the Philadelphia Community of Leaders, which is also trying to aggregate the capacity within the Black community to try to tackle some of these issues, which are very structural and institutional, and many times what we focus on many times are the symptoms and not really go to the root of the problem. And it's very difficult, but what Universal is attempting to do and what the Philadelphia Community Leaders is attempting to do is actually look at the root of the problem with the hope that we can come up with some solutions to deal with both some short-term, but also to begin to reverse some of the structural challenges that we have. So that's about all I want to say right now.
Good morning. I want to thank Pam Bridgeworth for inviting me to write an article for the annual report and inviting me to participate in this discussion this morning. I am Bernard Anderson, Professor Emeritus of the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, and now also a Senior Associate of eConsult, the Economic and Strategy Research Organization here in Philadelphia. Let me say, my friends, that my views on community development are forged by my personal background growing up in South Philadelphia, within walking distance of this building, 15th and Christian, where incidentally my grandmother used to babysit Kenny Gamble. And also my education and experience as a professional economist. Based on that experience and years of professional experience in academia and in public service, having served in the Clinton administration and done several other things in a diverse career, I have concluded that the root cause of community disinvestment and community distress is racial inequality in economic life. Let me go on and say that the disparities, the racial disparities in employment, income, and wealth, in my view, lie as the root cause of the community distress and community disinvestment that you grapple with every day. If that is so, then I believe that strategies to eliminate those conditions and to address community distress must include as one of their major objectives the elimination and addressing racial inequality in economic life. Now, that is not to say that providing services to communities and trying to revitalize communities by dealing with the day-to-day problems is not important. It is important. But if strategies to revitalize communities do not include as a core mission the elimination of racial inequality in economic life, then those strategies will not be successful. They will not be sustainable. They will not address the root cause of the problem that community organizations are grappling with. It will continue on and on and on. Now, rather than to belabor the point, because I respect the time, I'm an old university professor programmed for 50 minutes, and so I didn't want to stay within that. But let me say this. There are certain lessons I have learned from my professional experience in dealing with economic problems, and including trying to accelerate economic growth and address problems of community disinvestment. Number one, those strategies cannot be successful without the role of what you do. That effective, well-run community organizations are a sine qua non for addressing community distress. Secondly, government cannot lead the effort to revitalize communities. I can give you reams of evidence on the failure of government-led programs, the war on poverty, the Model Cities program. I can give you reams of evidence. These programs were not fully effective. They had some positive impacts, they were not fully effective. And what that means is that while government is important, the policies pursued by government, funding by government, that is important. But that cannot be the lead. What is important is the role of the private sector and public-private partnerships involving organizations like yours working with the public sector to address the broad range of issues that we're dealing with. And so I will conclude my brief remarks by saying that let's look at the root cause of why we have these problems. Look at the root cause. And the root cause is racial inequality in economic life. Very quickly, look at Philadelphia today. This is the last thing I'll say. Economics is a field of numbers, quantitative analysis. You have a city where the unemployment rate of African Americans has been twice or more the rate of unemployment of whites in the city of Philadelphia for as long as the statistics have been collected by race. Number two, in 1974, Asa Moore, who was a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, called me and asked me, he was doing a series of articles on youth in the inner city. He said, Bernie, what is the real rate of unemployment for black youth in Philadelphia? I said, give me a half an hour, I'll look at the statistics and I'll adjust them and so forth. I called him back and estimated, based on an analysis of the BLS statistics that the real rate of unemployment for black youth in the city of Philadelphia in February 1974 was 65%. That has not changed significantly since that time. Number three, what about income? The African American median income, the median is a factor that distributes the distribution by half. Half are above the median, half are below the median. The median income of African Americans in the city of Philadelphia is less than 50% of the median income of white families in the city of Philadelphia. And what about wealth? Wealth is net income, net worth. The difference between your assets and your liabilities. Your assets are what you own, your liabilities are what you owe. The median wealth of African Americans in this country today is about $7,100. The median wealth of white families in this country today is about $116,000. You cannot have equitable community development with those kinds of economic disparities. I'll stop there and hope that others will add to this conversation. Thank you very much.
My name is Blaine Stoddard. I run a company called BFW Group. We do development consulting, we raise funds for capital projects, and we do construction project management. We just finished 3 projects, and now my staff is sitting around twiddling their thumbs. If you have a project, let's talk. I'm going to talk about race just quickly, and I wrote my stuff down, so I'll be brief. And I'm going to talk about my mom. My mom taught me, don't talk about race and religion. One of the first rules she taught me. My mom said, don't protest or raise your head, it'll get chopped off. My mom taught me marry a light-skinned girl because maybe she wanted light-skinned, she didn't want her grandchildren too dark. I'm just being real now. This is stuff we don't talk about, folks. And so we're just being real. My mom taught me, if you have a problem, pray about it. For God's sakes, don't try to do anything about it. In addition to that, just switching a little bit, Philadelphia in particular, because of, some have said because of our Quaker background, because of our Mayflower background, I don't know. We're not too prone to change. We don't like change. And the best example I can give you is Jeremy Nowak. Anybody remember Jeremy Nowak? Know Jeremy Nowak? Remember Jeremy Nowak? He started the reinvestment fund. He went over to William Penn Foundation. And he wrote a paper and made some statements that he was going to make significant change at the William Penn Foundation. And I'm using Jeremy because he's a prime example of what I'm talking about. He was fired like the next day. They just fired him. No press release, just fired him. Brilliant man. And I did not necessarily agree with all the changes he was talking, but he was talking about making change, particularly the William Penn Foundation, particularly as it related to education. They just fired him the next day. Gone. Last but not least, PACDC. I've been talking to Rick about this for at least 5 years, Rick. We've been going back and forth. And again, I feel that I'm one of the catalysts for this forum. So I've been talking to Rick for at least 5 years about racial inequality in community development. And there's an article in this book about it. Saying, you know, Washington, D.C. has done some great things. New York is trying to do some great things. Atlanta's done some great things as it relates to inclusion and economic development. And the lack of, when I was president of PACDC, yes, I was president of PACDC, at least half the executive directors were people of color. Now I can count 3, maybe 4, I'm not sure. Raheem, you're 1. Majida is the 2nd. Kim is the 3rd. And I think Allegheny West is the 4th. So we go from 50% executive directors and CEOs, people of color, to maybe 4. So in the community development community, as it relates to racial inclusion, we're also going backwards. we're also going backwards. And if we can come up with a land bank, if we can come up with a policy to end homelessness, PACDC needs to be at the vanguard of economic inclusion. And I think economic inclusion is a topic now because we see kids burning their own neighborhoods down on national TV, and we don't want that to happen in Philadelphia. But again, the statistics are horrendous. They're horrendous, they're horrible, they're not acceptable. And so we need to do something about it. Black people, white people, everybody, Latinos, we need to do something about it and make it an agenda item as a group. Land bank is important. And yes, we need to take controversial positions. We make bad decisions just to get along. I won't talk about RDA versus PACDC for the land bank. That's another discussion.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Rodriguez, and it's great to be back in many ways. Rose Gray and I worked for 5 years, and I want to say that I couldn't love her anymore. So Rose, I'm glad to be here today. I'm the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant and Multicultural Affairs. And I hope that you take what I'm going to say with the intent in which it is being delivered, which is a very honest and authentic one. I will say that it looks like diversity and integration, right, seem to be sort of embedded and assumed values that we all share, and I hope that's the case, right? But I also want, before we get too ahead on the conversation, I want to point out a couple of things. I think we really need to understand what the face of Philadelphia looks like, what the city really looks like, right? Philadelphia, and I wish I had the map, and Kim, you're here. You've seen, you know, we have a map. I do a presentation with Kim and Stacy from Interface Studio, right? On how to plan for multicultural and immigrant communities as part of the ethics curriculum for the American Planning Association. It's really interesting. There's a map that shows Philadelphia and dots. And if you have seen the Pew report on the state of the city, you probably have seen this map. Philadelphia is one of the most segregated cities in the country. We call it a city of neighborhoods. That's code for segregation. What it really means is that Black communities stay with Black people, Hispanics, really just live amongst themselves, and whites do. There's very little crossover in the city of Philadelphia. That's a problem. Because those really concentrated places are also places where you have a lot of poverty, and also the places where we have a lot of challenges in the city of Philadelphia. I also want to say that the city of Philadelphia is no longer a black and white city. 12% of the residents in the city of Philadelphia are foreign-born. 21% of Philadelphians do not speak English at home. So that means that at least half of one of those tables would be speaking a language other than English at home. And these are the communities in which you work. We need to really understand what is the makeup of the cities in which we work. 50 years of decline in the city of Philadelphia, of population decline in the city of Philadelphia, have been followed by 8 consecutive years of modest population growth. And we talk a lot about millennials being that push. But really, immigrants are really doing a lot of the new vitality in the city. A recent study from the Fiscal Policy Institute looked at Philadelphia closely. And it actually got to the conclusion that between 2007 and 2013, 96% of all businesses in our main streets were created by immigrants. And we know how critical our neighborhood commercial corridors are to vitality of our neighborhoods. Well, it is not you and I creating those businesses. It is really immigrants creating those businesses. And I will lastly say that we talk about diversity as if it's something that you achieve and you retain. But really it is an equilibrium. Diversity is not something that you count today and you have 30% African American, 30% Black, 10% Latinos, and you're done. It is something that you have to intentionally, consistently, and affirmatively work on every day. Because you achieved it today and tomorrow it's gone. So I think I will leave you with something that I want you to go, when you go back to the office, go and search for the parable of the polygons. And you will understand how is it that diversity really works. It's sort of like it's research. Professors have gone and have modeled research on diversity and integration and segregation into a very neat game that you can play with online, and you will really get the idea that really you must be very intentional and deliberate to really achieve the integration and the diversity that we're all searching for.
Good morning, my name is John Chen with the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation. I just want to thank PACDC and also recognize PACDC for an organization that can actually host a conversation about race and community development. Not many organizations can pull it off, but PACDC has through its annual report and through today's discussion. I think the issue about race and the conversation we're having about community development and equalizing the haves and the have-nots. The conversation we're having today is deliberate, it's historical, and it's forward-thinking, and it's strategic. It's all of those in this discussion today. Race is complicated, because I'll tell my colleague Blaine that you should add one more person as an executive director of Organization of Color, and that's me. So, that's how complicated it is, because we all live in our own worlds. There's not enough resources to do everything that we want to do. And many times we can only focus on the needs that are in front of us. So for me, it's Chinatown. Chinatown is 26 blocks, and Chinatown North is another 26 blocks. Yet the fact is that those that speak Chinese that need services come to Chinatown, come to PCDC for services. Because the city, as Jennifer has said, has many new immigrants living in the city. And they are not getting the services that they need, whether it's at the state level, the city level, and the community level. There's not enough resources to serve everyone. So race is complicated, and I think one of the important things that we discussed in our op-ed piece from PCDC is that we as community development organizations, we work really hard to achieve change, positive change, for those that are low income in our communities. We want those that are low income to move up in the social economic ladder. So when neighborhoods change for the positive, real estate values rise and incomes rise, that's a good thing for a neighborhood. But the issue that we are challenged with time and time and again over the years, over the decades, is that those who are the have-nots do not share in those benefits and that prosperity. So the question is, can we influence and change the incoming administration, the new council persons, those people that change and implement policy at the legislative level, can we influence them to make the right policy changes? And the people in this room are the ones that can do it. So how do we achieve that? It's got to be through broad conversations that go beyond race. It's, for the people that are the haves and are in power and have the wealth, they want people to continue to talk about race. Because race is an easy methodology to have people think about segregation, distinct different groups. If we can all come together, think about all the issues that low-income folks and people that are have-nots struggle with and are challenged with, and race has to be a part of that conversation, but it's much more than about race. So I'll just end with that.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sandy Salzman. from New Kensington CDC. And I'm here to talk about something a little bit different. I'm here to talk about class. Because in our neighborhood, we don't have the same racial tensions that are in other parts of the city. They're there, and I'm not saying they're not there, but they're not as, the big thing that we're dealing with is the hipsters versus the old timers. And some people might say that's gentrification. It's something that happens all the time. But in our community, it's become real because our neighborhoods of Fishtown, Kensington, and Port Richmond have always been middle class to lower class, blue collar neighborhoods where people had always either worked in the shipping industry or worked in the factories around the neighborhood. You know, people didn't need educations. I was the first one in our family to graduate from high school because you didn't need an education back then. You could just walk out one door and walk down the street and get a job in another factory because there were factories all over the place. You know, by the 70s, those factories are all gone. You know, and so we now have a group of people in our neighborhood who don't have wealth, who don't have a lot of income, who don't have an education, you know, and for them, it's really difficult. And now we have all of these new people moving in who have all of that and more, you know, and so that's where our tensions have been, more around the class and people who have been in this neighborhood for years and years, and, you know, new people moving in, and how we get them all to work together. And I guess as we go through the morning, I can talk a little bit about some of the ways we've done that. Thank you.